I'm terribly sorry I'm not going to be with you. I would love to be with you in this occasion, and I'm sure with so many friends there and comrades, there will have been a great joy. But the fact is that I'm heavily involved in trying to, with many other people, to try to change Southern Europe, Spain. You know that I came originally from Spain, and there are many things that are happening in Spain, and that in that respect I was called by one of the political parties that I'm advising, Podemos, to please attend a meeting that was critical in terms of some of the things that they tried to do. Anyway, I'm sorry about it, but because I emotionally I would like to be with you in this very important moment. But now here we are. Let me now then explain how the Socialist Caucus came about. And we have to analyze the context in which it appears. When I arrived in the United States in 1965, the United States is in the middle of a huge agitation. It's a moment of protest. There was the anti-Vietnam War, extremely important mobilization. The civil rights movement, extremely important mobilization. The feminist movement started the first steps in that direction. Also, the anti-imperialist forces became strong. One revolution became successful as an average every year at that time. So the empire was clearly on the defensive. In Europe, many things were happening. Where the May events in France, remember, the workers took over the factories. The same in Italy, in the hot autumn. In Spain, the labor strikes, illegal, were forcing the end of that dictatorship. So the 60s became extremely important period for the history of the countries in both sides of the North Atlantic. And here I am. I landed in the United States in the middle of that agitation. That is terribly important. That led to many of us trying to organize to see what could be done. Now, I repeat that when I arrived in the United States, in the healthcare, the major force within the radical movement was HealthPAC. The Ehrenreichs have written a very important book called The American Health Empire. The analysis of what was wrong in medicine was the enormous dominance of the professions, the medical establishment, the hospital establishment. And the American Health Empire was that image. We thought that that was very positive and very valuable, but dramatically insufficient. I think that we felt that the problem, the root of the problem, was capitalism, and the same forces that shaped the nature of United States capitalism were also shaping the nature of American medicine. And in that respect, we predicted that in the long term, the ones who control the medical care of the United States will be the large insurance, financial capital. And that is what indeed happened. It's important because I remember some of the discussions, we have very lovely discussions. We had it in New York many times, sometimes in Baltimore, sometimes in Washington. It was a very active group of people coming from very different disciplines, orientations, some academics or non-academics, but it was a very good collegial group, and I remember with great warmth. That is why I love to be there and embrace many of you. I'm sure we are listening now, and you'll also remember. So that was and we call it Health Marxist Organizations, HMOs, terms that were later on used to define the insurance-based HMOs. So in that respect, the Marxist HMOs predicted the appearance of the insurance-based HMOs. So in that respect, that was a very interesting experience. So, but the issue was what to do, and we thought that the American Public Health Association, a very progressive association, funded by very progressive individuals who have been repressed during the McCarthy era. Anyway, so we thought that we should create some group there that could help to stimulate change. How to do it? I remember the discussion I had with students of mine, great CM, Howard Berliner, many others, great students, great individuals whom we have very meaningful discussions. It happened then, as an indicator of the progressiveness of that era, is they elected me as a member of the executive board of the American Public Health Association. And I tried to convince my colleagues from the executive board of the American Public Health Association, which I have just been elected, that there was a need to establish caucuses to provide more visibility to those groups that were being discriminated in the United States. So, and I remember discussing what would be the criteria to establish a caucus, what would be the function. My great interest was to convince them that these discriminated groups will have a special space within the program. Well, finally they agree on that. But what a surprise! They thought that behind my emphasis on establishing caucuses was the intention of establishing a Hispanic caucus. You should see their faces when I said, no, we want to establish a socialist caucus. Some of them almost fall from the chairs. They were not prepared for that. At the same time, it was very difficult for them to deny that the socialists were clearly discriminated within the APHA and within United States. And how it came up. So in that respect, the socialist caucus came because it was recognized that it was a discriminated group and deserved to have a space within the programs of the APHA. It's interesting, later on, other caucuses came up. But that is an important point. Now, the caucus became very, very attractive. As a matter of fact, I believe there was one of the largest, if not the largest, caucus at the time. And our sessions were extremely well attended. And many people from many different orientations came in, and it was a very, very rich, intellectually rich, and politically productive type of discussions. That is how the Socialist Caucus came about. Now, there were also many problems. So in that respect, not all were flowers. We also have some headaches. And we also encountered a lot of resistance. For example, we defended the Cuban Revolution. We defended the Soviet Union. We defended the Chinese Revolution. There were very big discussions, fully aware of their limitations. I remember I wrote a book called Social Security Medicine in the USSR, subtitle, A Marxist Critique, that was forbidden in the Soviet Union. I was declared persona non grata in that country. So, but anyway, we defended the Cuban Revolution, and that had a cost. We were red-baited, very nasty. And even sometimes from individuals who consider themselves as progressives, but they felt threatened by the appearance of another critical tradition that became very popular among public health professionals and workers. So in that respect, it was a fight, quite a struggle. But the caucus was established and became a major point of reference. As a matter of fact, many of the changes within the APHA, behind those changes, there was the Socialist Caucus. For example, the Dallen's proposal, the intent of establishing a national health program where every United States citizen or resident would be entitled to have access to health care as a matter of human right. That started in the Socialist Caucus. So in that respect, many changes in the occupational law came from the Socialist Caucus. The same in the environmental law. And many of the creations of support for the Allende government, for the Cuban changes in the healthcare, came those notes of support from the Socialist Caucus. So, in that respect, we had an impact. It was a fight, a good fight, but we also had many, many hostility. And I bear the scars even now from those struggles. Now, in that sense, now the issue. Oh, let me also say that we also have an international dimension that is not so well known. But many of those who established the Socialist Caucus also were critical elements in the establishment of the International Association of Health Policy, the largest association of health professionals, progressive health professionals in the world. Paradoxically, in the United States has never been very visible or very strong, but it is very strong in Latin America and also in Europe. That was funded by the same forces who shaped the Socialist Caucus. Also, at the academic level, the International Journal of Health Services, the best known forum among progressives, was started at that time. So it was a movement that had different dimensions, had different impacts, Socialist Caucus, International Association of Health Policy, International Geographical Services. That was a very important point. Now, let me finish because I was asked to speak for a very few minutes about what to do now. Well, it seems to me that on both sides of the North Atlantic there are very strong forces to say enough. What is happening is not tolerable. Our institutions, they define themselves as democratic, are basically corrupt institutions. In the United States, it's obvious. The Congress of the United States is at the pocket of the corporate class of this country. The same in Europe. What we are seeing is the Americanization of the political life in Europe, where we find that today the European Union is clearly controlled by financial capital, and Greece is under enormous attack, and there is no better expression, that is a war against Greece at the benefit of the German banks, French banks, and so on. So, in that respect, there is a protest movement. The party that I'm advising in Spain is part of a movement that was initiated by the Indignados movement, the people who went to the streets and say, enough, we want democracy. Today, the most revolutionary demand is not the nationalization of means of production, but the democratization of the state. And that is where, in the United States, we have a lot to do, because the institutions are basically not representative. And the majority of people know that. 80% of United States citizens know the Congress does not represent them. So that is where the Socialist Caucus should be focusing on now. And I'm delighted that the Socialist candidate appears and is attracting a lot of people. I know of all the criticism that can be made of Bernie Sanders, but it's great. There is a socialist individual speaking on socialist terms. He speaks about class struggle, and that is extremely important. However, he himself is the first one to say that unless there is a socialist movement, unless there is a movement of people asking for change, people are aware that things are not working. People are aware the whole thing is a farce. But they need to become aware that they move themselves, they can move mountains. And that is also happening in Europe. So in that respect, my invitation is to those of you of all different ages, join your voice to rekindle the spirit of the Socialist Caucus in the way that we initiated many things at that time, and now it's time to keep pressuring to make sure, particularly in the United States, that access to healthcare should be a basic human right. I'm sure that in that, when happens, the Socialist Caucus will be behind that. And thank you very much, and I hope to see you sometimes very soon. My love to all of you.